I want to welcome everybody to Brister Sunday School once again. I've got the biggest crowd I've had so far. There's 3 people in here tonight, and they're spread out. They're social distancing, but it's good to have them, and it's good to see you once again. Last week, just to review a little bit, we talked about everybody missing the music that we hear every Sunday here at Brister, and evidently a lot of people are missing it, and I got several emails or texts this week. We talked about 2 songs last Sunday, and evidently I found out that there's a lot of people that were raised. There are a number of people that were raised in the Hephzibah community, and they have fond memories of Hephzibah. They sent me a text thanking me for talking about it. I really appreciate it, and evidently Miss Lahoma Matthews was well thought of in that community, and evidently she was a great cook. Everybody mentioned how they liked going to Miss Lahoma's house and visiting with her. But once again, I do appreciate the text and the emails about that. And I'm going to talk about something this week that once again, we miss the music a lot, but something else that I'm really missing here at Brister, and that's all the children that we see every week here at Brister, and not only on Sundays but on Wednesday nights, and we're blessed to have so many youth here. And I can just think about one Sunday when children's church wasn't happening, back in the corner that we sat in, I counted, and there were 16 kids that were in that back section, all the way from little Kelly Mae Romero to Addison, and I'm including the teenagers in that because it's good to see them here too. We're blessed with a lot of good youth, and it's good to see these youth in here every Sunday and these babies, and I enjoy seeing them, and I'm really missing them. And just briefly, just a couple of things that I remember. The first baby that I actually remember being born at Brister was Trenton Ainsworth, and I was always kind of close to Trenton. I guess because of that, he always sat in front of us, and when Trenton was little, I'd look down the row at him and smile, and I'd bow my fist up at him, and he'd do the same thing back to me, and we did that for several years. And then Trenton got bigger than me, so I got where I wouldn't do it with him no more. But I started doing it then with Jax Boring. I'd look down there and I'd kind of bow my fist up. And the last time I saw Jax, he was smaller than me, but he was growing a lot. And I'm scared when I see him again, he's going to be as tall as me. But once again, I really miss the kids every Sunday. Evidently, other people do too, because I've talked about with some Awana workers and how much they miss them. So I thought just about what I could do for kids or about kids. And I've just one time before really looked at the life of Jesus when Jesus was just a kid. And I don't mean any disrespect to Jesus, but Jesus was a kid just like the rest of the kids here at Brister. And today we're going to look at Jesus when he was just a kid. And there's a lot of things to learn about this. It's a good story, although there's not much information on it. But before we talk about Jesus as a kid, I want to just relate to you what Jesus thought about kids. And we know that Jesus loved kids, but when Jesus was at the height of his ministry, people were bringing their kids to Jesus. They wanted him to lay his hands on them, wanted them to heal them. Well, one time, once again at the height of his ministry, many people were bringing their kids to Jesus. And I'm going to be turning in your Bible to Matthew 19, verse 13 and 14. Matthew 19, verse 13 and 14. And it says, Then little children were brought to him that he might put his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Like I say, Jesus was very busy at this time. He's at the height of his ministry. Lots of kids are coming. But the disciples, they rebuked the people for bringing the kids. And you wonder why they rebuked them. Maybe they said, well, the kids just make too much noise and I can't concentrate and we just don't need the kids here. Maybe the kids just can't sit still and they're a distraction, or the kids don't pay attention anyway. Why bring the kids? But Jesus, he corrected them. He said, no. He said, that's not right. He said, you bring the kids to me. And I'm thankful that that's what the people at Brister do. They bring their kids to church. They make it a point to them. Jesus loved kids when he was an adult. And I'm thankful once again that we have a church that's full of kids. So with that in mind, let's look at Jesus when he was a child, when he was growing up. And we'll start at the first. We know all about the birth of Jesus. It's a great story, and there's no reason for me to really get into that. But after the birth of Jesus, we know that the wise men told Herod that a king had been born. Herod didn't like this. Herod was the king. He was the man in charge. And we know that Herod ordered all the babies of a certain age and younger to be killed. And Mary and Joseph took Jesus and they went to Egypt. They stayed there for a while. But after Herod had died, we read what they did. And we're going to pick up in Luke, chapter 2 of Luke. Chapter 2 of Luke, verse 39 tells us, it says, so when they had performed all these things according to the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own city, Nazareth. And the child grew and became strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. Herod had died. It was safe to go back to Israel with the baby. So Mary and Joseph returned home, and they went to Nazareth, it says. Now, Nazareth wasn't well thought of. It didn't have a good reputation. The higher-ups in Israel looked down on Nazareth. They said, Nazareth is the other side of the tracks over there. We don't think much of Nazareth. But Jesus was proud to be from Nazareth. And I'm sure Jesus did everything he could to make Nazareth a good place. After Jesus died and when he came back and he met Paul, who was Saul at that time, on the Damascus Road, he identified himself as Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus was proud of his hometown, and I'm sure Jesus did everything he could to make it a great hometown. But it says there in verse 40 when we read that, and it's like most kids, he grew up physically, mentally, socially, spiritually. His childhood was like just a lot of kids that are here at Brister. He was just your normal, everyday kid at that time. And meaning no disrespect, once again, calling him a kid. So, where do we go from there? Verse 41 of chapter 2, verse 41 and 42 tells us, his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. We see that as a child, we see that Jesus' parents, we see Mary and Joseph, were devout followers of the Lord. There were a number of religious festivals that were held every year in Jerusalem, and you were required to go to the three main ones, and it says this was the Feast of the Passover that celebrated the Passover that happened many years before in Egypt. And like good Christians do on Sunday morning, they went to the feast. It was required of them, and they took their kid. They made sure that the kid went to the feast too. And it said it was a custom that they did this. It wasn't just something that they had to think about. Do we want to go to church today? Is it raining outside? What are we going to cook for lunch? No, it was a custom. They did it without having to think about doing it. It was the right thing to do, and that's what we need to do. We need, if we don't have going to church as a custom in our life, we need to make that a custom. But it said, and I like relating this story because it really helps you understand how old he was at this time. Jesus was 12 years old at this time. And if you think about it, Miles Welch and Jack Waller are 12 years old, or one of them's almost 12 years old. So Jesus was a kid about as old as Miles or Jack, if that helps you relate to how old he was at that time. So they're going to this festival, this feast in Jerusalem. Excuse me. In verse 43 of Luke 2, it tells us, when they had finished the days, as they returned, the boy Jesus lingered behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother did not know it. But supposing him to have been in the company, they went a day's journey and sought him among their relatives and acquaintances. And Brother Eric, I think, talked about this before in church. I'm not sure, it might have been a Wednesday night. But when these people, these Israelites, went to these feasts, they traveled in groups. And once again, to give you a picture of what they did, it started out with your family, and then you gathered your friends, and then your neighbors, ultimately a town, and they ended up with a large group traveling together. And you can think about this and just go to the end of the county road right down here and start at Clayton and Denise's house. They'd have told Spencer to come on and go with us. Well, Shine and Jessica would have walked across the hayfield with their little girls and got in the group. They'd have stopped and got the Shepherds, picked up the Romeros, the Welches, come on down the road and get Holly and Jorge, get Brother Eric right here, get Jeff across the road, Jeff and Whitney, and they would travel and they'd pick up people along the way. And it'd eventually be a big group. Well, the feast had ended, they headed home, and here they are. They're all traveling together. And I found out, and I can't exactly figure out why, the women traveled first. They were in the front of the group, the men were in the back of the group, and the kids played together in between them, sort of a safety net and everything. And it wasn't anything for you not to see your kid for a while, because they'd be off playing with somebody else. And it says that they couldn't find, that it said that Jesus had stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they didn't know it at the time. I'm sure the 12-year-old kid, he's probably off playing with Fletcher Gas or walking with somebody else down the road. But it got sundown and they couldn't find him. He said, we better go find what's going on here. So we go to verse 45 of Luke 2, and it says, so when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem, seeking him. Now, so it was that after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. Now, they couldn't find him. What did we do? We go back to where we were. They went back to Jerusalem, searched for him, and they finally found him after 3 days. They searched for Jesus till they found him. And this is kind of a play on words like that, but we should continually search for Jesus just like they did. We should never give up our search for Jesus. But it's real interesting. They found him in the church. Of course, it was called a temple at that time. That's where the young boy was. And I wonder if people needed to find me, how far they would go down the list before they thought to look in a church. You know, they might look in the deer woods, they might look out on a pond fishing or doing something like that. And we have to ask ourselves, if people needed to find us, would they think to look for us in a church? You know, are we well known for that? But anyway, they found him in the church. And what was Jesus doing? It said he was listening and he was asking questions. We saw back up there in verse 40 that he already was filled with wisdom. But at the age of 12, he was still learning about all the Old Testament scriptures. He was learning all about God. Even though he was filled with wisdom, he was still trying to increase his knowledge about the Lord. And y'all, that's a great thing to do. Even at age 12, full of wisdom. He wanted to know about the Lord, and that sets a great example for us. We'll never know all about the Bible. There's no way we ever will, but we ought to be continually learning and asking questions. And y'all, the festival was over, but he was still in church. Church doesn't end just when Brother Eric says the final, or Brother Jeremy says the final amen. Church still goes on at any time. Church never ends. We say here at Brister, the church has left the building, and it does. Just because the church service was over, Jesus is still doing the work of the church. But it gets even better, this young kid in verse 47. And it tells us in verse 47 of Luke 2, and all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and his answers. Not only was Jesus still learning, Jesus at the age of 12 was telling people about Jesus. It says he was answering questions. And y'all, I've told you this before, and I started my table right here. I like talking to Steve and Debbie, and I like talking to Millie and Alan, and I don't mind talking to them about Jesus, but here Jesus was telling strangers, he was sharing them about the Bible, and that's something that sets a great example for all of us. Do we share like a 12-year-old was doing there? If it's not, that's something we need to do. Verse 48 tells us, so when they, this is his mother and father, so when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously. It says she was amazed, and this word here means she was happy. She was relieved. She was kind of surprised to find him in a church. But there's a great lesson here. My Bible says they searched anxiously. Some Bibles say they were sorrowful. But it sets a great example. Whenever we're anxious, whenever we're sorrowful, when we're sad, we're lost, we need to do like Perry and Joseph. And we need to search for Jesus, because that's where the answer comes. It's from Jesus. And they had sought him, and they said, why, Jesus? Why have you done this to us? What's the deal, Jesus? I mean, we've been looking for you. Couldn't find you. You had us worried. What's the deal? And he gives them a great answer. It's hard to believe that this child is 12 years old. But in verse 49, he answered them, and he said, verse 49, and he said to them, why do you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business? But they did not understand the statement which he spoke to them. And that's a great answer. He told them, didn't you know I'd be about my Father's business? And he was telling them, God sent me here to do something. He got a job for me to do, and I'm doing this job. I'm getting prepared to do this job. Why is that a surprise? And that's a great thing. He knew what God had sent him to this earth to do, and he was fulfilling that mission. He was doing what God sent him here to do. And he's doing exactly what God sent him here to do. And that's a great question we need to ask ourselves. What about us? Are we doing everything that God sent us here to do? Or are we going to get to it next week? Or, well, I just don't have enough time. I'll put it on the back burner. Jesus is doing what God sent him to do as a 12-year-old kid. That sets a great example for us all. Well, he went on home with them, finished up in Jerusalem. And what do we read next? In verse 51, it says, then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject to them, but his mother kept all these things in her heart. Went back home with them, and it said he was subject to them. Jesus knew the Bible. He knew the fifth commandment was honor your father and mother, and that's exactly what he did. He went back and honored his father and mother. Most Bible scholars say that Jesus learned the trade of carpentry at this time from his father, and they eventually took over the carpentry business and learned the trade. But he went back home and he lived with his parents, and he was subject to them. But in verse 52, and this wraps this up, this scripture, it says, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. He continued to increase in all areas of his life, especially his spiritual life. And that's something that we should never do. We never should be content with what we know about the Bible, and I've realized how little I know about the Bible, but we should always continue to learn all that we can, increase our knowledge. Now, that ends that part of the scripture, and unfortunately in the Bible, Luke 2, verses 39 through 52, are just about all there is in the Bible about when Jesus was a kid. And it's a great story, and from all indications, Jesus was a great kid, just like a lot of kids here at Brister. He's a great kid. Obviously, none of us knew Jesus when he was a kid, and unfortunately, I didn't know Jesus when I was a kid. I wish I had have, but I'm thankful that I know Jesus now. I'm really missing our Brister kids, and I can't wait to see them. There's some babies that we hadn't even laid eyes on yet that have been born since we started this social distancing. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. I know that you are too. With that, I'll wrap up the Sunday school lesson and say that I just hope to see our kids soon. Prayer request, and once again, this is Thursday evening, so a lot of things can change between now and Sunday. But Donna Bradbury, that's Spencer's sister, she was very ill, but she's doing much better now. They did a surgical procedure on her, and she's much improved. Scotty Pennington, we need to keep Scotty in our prayers. Many people I found out here at Brister went to high school with him or went all through school with him, know him good, was a church member here. We need to keep Scotty in our prayers. Pray for the family of Miss Zelma Hanson. This is Kathy Camp's great aunt who passed away. We need to remember her. Once again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with y'all today. I've been tipped off that there's going to be something a little bit special happen in the church service this coming Sunday. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I'm really looking forward to that. I hope everybody has a good week, and I can't wait to see y'all. Thank you.